come across as someone who's quite experimental,
Mm-hmm.
I think, right? And one of the first things that I came across you doing was eating giant hogweed, which I've always considered to be toxic.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your experimental side, but using that as a segue.
Okay, so I got interested in. Well, I think everyone gets into foraging because it's something different. It's wanting to try some food that they can't necessarily get from the supermarkets. You're looking for flavours that you can't get from the supermarkets. And when you've been doing it for a while, I mean, I've been doing it for 20-something years now. When you've been doing it for a while, you've read everything that's in the books that are around at the time. You've done a lot of research online, and you start coming across things that are so closely related to plants that you already know, and you start reading up on the differences. And I started reading up on giant hogweed, and I looked at things that other members of the AOF had written, things by Craig and Fergus, and
Fergus Drennan
and
Craig
Worrell, and I was like, well, the main issues with the giant hogweed, to all intents and purposes, scientifically, the chemical compounds that are present in giant hogweed are almost identical to the ones that are in common hogweed.
Right.
They're also almost identical to the ones that are in parsnips.
Right.
And in fact, more people get... So the thing that we're talking about that most people worry about is this sap.
Yeah.
It's this phytotoxic sap. So if you get it on your skin on a hot sunny day, it burns.
Yeah.
And it bonds with your cells on a genetic level, and it stays there until your cells have regenerated and replenished. So you can get burnt by it really badly, and every time you go out in the sun, for the next potentially 5 or 6, 7 years, you get these big blisters coming out.
Right.
So not good. I'm not promoting it as something that you want to be going out and doing. Don't cuddle giant hogweed. But you get that same reaction from parsnips. If you let parsnips in your garden or your allotment go to seed,
Yeah.
and you pull the stems out in the spring, and it's a hot day, and you get the sap from the stems on your hands, you'll get exactly the same reaction.
And it can last.
And in
just as
some
long.
times, it's even more severe. So the thing I took from that first of all was the fact that you've got two things that we consume regularly, parsnips and common hogweed. Because if you talk to any forager worth their salt, a lot of them will probably include common hogweed in their top 5, top 10 edibles. Because it's a really good edible both for the vegetative parts of the plant and for the seeds. Seeds are an amazing spice. So I was like, well, you've got that. And the chemicals are present across all of them. So if you've got that, the thing you're avoiding is this sun sap situation. Yeah. So I went out with a good friend Alex, and we collected giant hogweed buds on an overcast day.
So by buds you mean as it's growing?
As it's growing, you get
before it comes up to plant.
Yeah, well, no, as it's growing at the top, as the stem grows up, you get your leaf come out. It grows up again with a bud on the top.
Okay.
And then that bud will open, and the next set of the main stem will come out, and so will a side shoot.
Oh, so another kind of nodal bud.
A nodal bud, yeah. I didn't want to get too deep about it. So the nodal buds, we were collecting nodal buds. So on common hogweed, you'd expect the buds to be anywhere between the size of my thumb and probably like a pear size shape, a small pear.
Yeah.
On giant hogweed buds, those buds can be anything up to like the size of we were talking about earlier, like a Magnolia grandiflora flower bud.
Right.
So like really decent size.
So we're talking like a American softball kind of size, like
slightly elongated,
like a bowling ball, as in British bowls.
Yeah.
In bowls,
Yeah, maybe not quite that big, but yeah, you're talking about something that's easily 10 centimetres long and probably 6 centimetres
They're old
at the widest point. Yeah, they can be smaller, but we've come across them that big. So we picked those, and Alex took his off and did some bits with it, and I took mine home, and I was there thinking, well, what am I going to do with it? Do I just treat it exactly the same way as I do with the common hogweed? And normally with that, I just literally... So some people will steam their giant hogweed... will steam their common hogweed buds first. I don't bother, I normally just throw them straight in the frying pan.
Same, actually.
So what I did as a sort of faux pretense of safety. So I didn't say that. What I did to be on the safe side was I cut these buds in half down the length,
Yeah.
and I put them in a bowl of water and just left them to soak.
Hot water, cold water?
Cold water with a little bit of salt in.
Right.
I left them to soak for a while.
2 days? A day?
Probably about 2 hours.
2 hours. So
It
just
was
a
an
little while.
ADHD amount of time. They went in a bowl. I was going to go straight back to them. It was later.
We'll say you've got ADHD, so you're
Yeah,
allowed
yeah.
to say that. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went back later, having done about 20 jobs, 10% of the way through.
Right.
And took them out. I dried them off really well, tea towel, and then left them sit on the tea towel because, of course, because of the way they grow, you've got like this cluster of almost folded up tissue inside the bud. So the water had gone in all around. So I left them stood on the dishcloth to dry out fully to get the moisture out. And then I just put a pan of butter and oil mix on, just a very shallow skim, and just gently pan fried them, sautéed them until they started to go translucent. You know how the common hogweed buds go as they cook.
Yeah.
Did that with them. And they taste almost identical to the common hogweed buds.
I get a kind of perfumey taste, or hint of carrot.
Hint of carrot, hint of parsnip,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of celery at the back.
There's some kind of seedy carrot family thing
Yeah,
going on,
absolutely.
isn't there? Yeah.
The only difference I found was on that particular time I tried them, I found them to be slightly more bitter, slightly more acrid than common hogweed buds. Not to the point where I wouldn't have eaten them,
Yeah.
but to the point where if it was a choice between the common hogweed buds or those, I'd go with the common hogweed buds. If there were no common hogweed buds around though, I'd still be experimenting with the giant hogweed buds to try and find ways of pulling that acridness out.
So if you
Or to mask it, find a way of cooking
steamed
it.
it in vinegar or something like that.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, there'd be
Lemon
ways
juice
around
or something.
lemon juice, yeah.
Something to balance out that bitterness. And if you look at traditional, say, Asian cooking, when you've got a bitter vegetable, yeah, you tend to balance it, like you say, with a vinegar, with a lemon juice, or with some sugar.
Same as brewing, same as making
Yeah,
beer,
yeah.
same
You're
as
getting that.
cocktail.
You're just getting that
Yeah, yeah.
balance, aren't you? So yeah. So I started with that, but then it sort of spills over into other things, and for me, it's just, I think, it's a way of keeping the interest going. The reason I liked it was because I'm a bit of a geek.
Yeah.
And I like learning new stuff. I don't necessarily like learning too much about any one particular thing. I like skimming across.
I'm interested in you eating poisonous food, though. That was another thing that sort of you've eaten lords and ladies is another one.
Yeah.
So
Don't do that.
Latin name
Arum italicum.
Thank you. Couldn't remember it. Never can.
No, is it
I might stick.
Yeah, Arum italicum.
So that's the kind of plant that grows up like this and has another little bit like that, hence lords and ladies. You'll see it in the woods. We've got some here.
Oh, this stuff.
That stuff.
Yeah, this stuff here. It looks very much like sorrel.
Yeah.
Lots of people say, oh, it's sorrel, but sorrel you'll find growing out in the open, in meadows, lords and ladies, grows in the woodland. But you've got these very pronounced tails at the bottom of the leaves. You probably can't even see this.
We'll cut away
We'll
to
cut
one and
away.
have something.
Do some
Something.
some stuff.
Something in the links.
So yeah, so I'd read a lot about lords and ladies, and it's poisonous or toxic depending on which sort of route you want to go down with it. But if you go over to America, it was used fairly frequently as a famine food.
The root, is it?
Yeah, the root.
Yeah, and kind of like used like a cheeky yam where you.
Yeah. So it's in the same family, the same overall. It's in the aroid family, the same as taro.
Yeah.
The same as Edo, and those are both as poisonous, if not maybe more so, in their raw state. But those are processed in a way to break down the raphides, these crystals that are in the tuberous structure, that can pierce your skin, pierce your mouth, your stomach lining. Really painful burning sensation.
Yeah, I've accidentally eaten it.
Yeah.
Accidentally eaten it,
yeah.
never.
So you can, but they're processed to make them edible. And I was just there, and I always I would go on walks, and I would say to people, this is lords and ladies, you don't want to confuse it with the wild garlic, particularly at this time of year, when the wild garlic's very small, and so is the lords and ladies, and it hasn't unfilled properly, so you can't see those little tails. And I'd say, you really don't want to be eating it, it's really not nice. And I kept thinking, well, I'm just telling this to people, but I don't know that's true. So one day I just decided I'd have a nibble on a leaf. Because I knew it wasn't going to kill me. And I knew there was going to be no long-term issues. But I kind of thought, I like to be able to reference these things from a point of having at least a clue of what it's like.
Yeah, fair.
So like you accidentally eating a bit of a leaf.
Yeah. And now I've got an anecdote that I say on my walk. So I had a pocket full of wild garlic and a pocket full of lords and ladies, and I was going to come home, take a photo of each, and then stick it up on my website and talk about the differences and talk about how hard it really is once you know the differences to get them mixed up. And I was eating the wild garlic as I go around because I quite like just living on a bit of wild garlic, and I went in the wrong pocket.
Yeah.
And I was walking around Totnes, Dartington way, around there. And I just spent the whole time spitting in this beautiful little Devon town, like, you know,
but
not very attractive.
It's not nice.
Because it just burns, doesn't it?
It just burns all the way down. And then the other thing is when you've got the flower spikes, I think I said to you.
Yeah.
I was out on a walk, I don't know, last year, and this girl ran up to me with this. You've probably recognised the flower spikes. There's the inflorescences. You've got a spike with a cluster of red or orange berries on the top, like a corn on the cob kind of. And this girl came up running up to me with this. Look, what's this? What's this I found? And I quickly took it off her and said, you don't want to be messing around with this because it's got the same chemicals, those same raphides in the inflorescence in the berries. And I spent 10 minutes explaining to her and her family why she shouldn't be doing it.
With it in your hands?
With it in my hands. And I can't stand still. So I was literally passing it back and forth in my hands and rolling it between my hands. And 10 minutes later, my hands felt like they were on fire. I might as well literally have just stuck my hands straight onto a fire. And
so that burning sensation came through.
Yeah.
In your hands.
Yeah. And the only way you get rid of it is really hot water.
Right.
Because it helps to break down the structure of the. Yeah. Don't do that either.
So that's Rob and poison. So I'm going to pause the camera now, actually, because it only does 20-minute burn.
Okay.
And
too long
just to make
talking
sure, no, that's good. We were only 6 minutes in anyway.
There you go,
Oh no, we were 14 minutes in.
It felt
so
like a